Board. Welcome and call meeting to order Thursday, February the 13th, 2020. The commission is made up of volunteers with expertise or interest in historic preservation and design. We generally meet on the second Thursday of the month to review cases. Staff to the commission is our urban design and historic preservation staff. They are available to answer questions if you have them. Please do not interrupt proceedings if you do indeed need to speak with one of them. The meeting generally proceeds with the staff calling the case and describing it. I will call for the applicant to come forward afterwards to add to the basic description of the request, if necessary, or if the applicant wishes to do so. If so, the applicant should keep the presentation to 10 minutes or less. The commissioners will then have the opportunity to ask questions. At this point, I would ask if there is anyone in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the proposal.
Mr. Broom, I'm not sure people understood. They need to stand if they wish to speak. Is that what you were?
Okay.
So if you wish to stand, if you wish to present testimony tonight, you need to stand, please, to...
Have you signed the document outside the door? You tell the truth? Thank you. The audience comments shall be kept to 2 minutes per person. If there is, the applicant will have an opportunity to respond. This rebuttal shall not exceed 5 minutes. In most of the cases, we will make a decision tonight after all the information has been presented. If your case is denied or you feel that our decision was made in error, you and anyone standing have the opportunity to appeal within 30 days of the decision. If you plan to speak about a specific project, you must have signed in. The sheet is in the back of the room. Also, and so that members of the public understand, commissioners are under strict instruction to avoid discussing the DDRC meetings and applications with members of the public or with each other outside of these proceedings to avoid ex parte communications. If you wish to speak during the course of these proceedings, please stand and raise your right hand. You've done that. I would ask the staff to roll call.
Certainly, Mr. Bachnight.
Here.
Mr. Broom.
Here.
Mr. Cohn.
Here.
Mr. Dinkins.
Here.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Moore.
Here.
We have quorum.
I'm going to ask the staff if the agenda order still stands.
We've had a few changes to the order of the agenda. As I understand it, there is to be no executive session this evening. Also, under the historic part of the agenda, item number 1, 1700 block of Calhoun Street, intersection of Calhoun and Talley, has been withdrawn. This was a request for a rehearing for a certificate of design approval for modifications to the landmark wall on the former State House Hospital grounds, and it was an appeal to a staff decision. So that has been withdrawn. Otherwise, the agenda stands.
The DDRC utilized a consent agenda for those projects which require DDRC review, but which meets the guidelines and typically require no discussion. If anyone wishes to discuss an item on the consent agenda, I would ask that you speak up after the consent agenda is read, and we can pull the item for discussion on regular agenda.
I need to recuse myself for that, Mr. Chairman, and
Also, just as a matter of clarification, do we need to make a motion to approve the February minutes
We
in the
can do
agenda?
that as part of the consent
I would
agenda.
do-
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect.
The consent agenda currently stands with the first case being 745 South Main Street, a request for design approval for exterior changes in the City Center Design Development District. 100 Mulberry Lane, a request for preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill in the Whaley Street Protection Area. 2408 Clark Street, a request for preliminary certification for the Bailey Bill in the Elmwood Park National Register District. 1001 Pine Street, a request for design approval for exterior changes and preliminary certification of the Bailey Bill in the Old Shandon Lower Waverly Protection Area A. 1101 Pine Street, Chappelle Memorial AME Church, which is a request for a certificate of design approval for an addition in the Old Shandon Lower Waverly Protection Area A. And last, 1813 Main Street, a request for a recommendation for approval for landmark designation.
Is there anyone who wishes to take the item off the consent agenda for discussion? Anyone like to make a motion?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda as presented, as well as the January minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Bachnight,
Yes.
Mr. Broom,
Yes.
Mr. Dinkins,
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Motion passes. So our first case is 831 Chester Street, and I am presenting in lieu of Megan McNish, who is absent today. This is in the Elmwood Park Architectural Conservation District. It's a one-story, circa 1907, hip-roofed, wood-sided residence at the corner of Lincoln and Chester Streets. It features a wraparound front porch supported by Tuscan columns, original 2/2 windows, and a half-light front door. Due to its location on a corner lot, the rear of the property is highly visible, and the rear of the house features 2 large projecting bays with the porch space incorporated into the larger bay, as you can see here on the picture. Physical evidence and the 1919 Sanborn map illustrate that this is an original porch space, and although portions of it have been enclosed early on, the space still reads as a porch. The proposal is to add a dormer addition to the rear of the house and a significant expansion of the rear porch space. Additionally, the applicants are applying for the Bailey Bill, as they have multiple renovations involving electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems that they need to do. As proposed, the renovations to the electrical, plumbing, and HVAC systems are approvable per the guidelines in the Bailey Bill. Staff finds that although large, the dormer addition generally meets the guidelines, but the proposed porch addition is problematic for both the guidelines for the Elmwood Park Historic District and the criteria for the Bailey Bill on several fronts. Using the guidelines for the district, Guideline B requires that historic character be retained and preserved through the materials and features which characterize the district and the property. The rear porch space is highly visible. It's a unique feature of this property. It maintains scale and proportion to the house itself. Extending the back porch from its current 8-foot depth to the proposed 20-foot depth changes the original massing of the porch and would distort the understanding of it as a historic feature. In general, altering the footprint of the porch creates a space and massing that is not found in any visible location in the district. As the property is located on a corner lot, this alteration would be highly visible. Guideline E requires retaining distinctive features, finishes, and construction techniques or examples of craftsmanship that characterize a property. The 2 projecting rear bays, as stated, are original to the house and create a distinctive space. The historic porch is incorporated into the larger bay in such a way as to not disrupt the original architecture or its intent. Expanding the porch depth destroys this understanding of the original architecture and massing. Additionally, the expanded porch would interfere with the architecture of the projecting bay that is nearest the street, intersecting it in such a way that its integrity is compromised. Guideline H requires that new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property, and new work shall be differentiated from the old and be compatible with the massing size, size, scale, and architectural features of the original structure. Again, not only would the extant historic porch be lost to this expansion, this increases the depth of the porch to 20 feet, creating a massing that's not compatible with the size, scale, and architectural features of the property itself, nor is it consistent with historic examples in the district. This alteration would be irreversible and would destroy a feature that characterizes the property. In terms of the Bailey bill, this is a tax incentive for the retention of historic materials, features, massing, etc., of historic homes, and applies the same criteria that I've just discussed in addition to some others that are listed in your evaluation. Therefore, staff finds that the porch expansion does not meet the guidelines either for the historic district or for the Bailey bill. So, in terms of recommendations, staff finds that the proposal for alteration of the rear porch is not consistent with the review criteria used for projects in the Elmwood Park Architectural Conservation District, outlined in Section 17-674D of the City Ordinance, or the review criteria for the Bailey bill, outlined in Section 17-698 of the City Ordinance. The proposal for repairs to the structure and the dormer addition are generally compliant with both the Bailey bill standards and criteria for review in Elmwood Park. Staff is recommending granting a certificate of design approval for the dormer addition and preliminary certification of the Bailey bill on the condition that the porch expansion be removed from the scope of work. Generally, staff finds dormer addition and repair project complies with Section 17-674D and Section 17-698 of the City Ordinance, recommending granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions. The rear porch space not be expanded, the dormer addition not be visible from Lincoln Street, materials proposed for removal be approved by staff before their removal, all other details deferred to staff. Regarding the Bailey bill, staff finds that the project at 831 Chester Street generally complies with Section 17-698 of the City Ordinance and recommends granting preliminary certification for the Bailey bill with the following conditions. The rear porch space not be expanded. The project meeting or exceeding the 20% investment threshold requirements for qualified rehabilitation expenses. All work meeting the standards for work as outlined in Section 17-698 and all details deferred to staff.
There's an applicant for this case. Like to speak?
Hi, my name is Wesley McManus. I'm here representing the owners. They request an initial, their first choice, should a porch expansion be available, as a 20-foot porch is shown. We were told we couldn't bring another option, which is a 14-foot porch, which I think brings the massing much closer in and tail with the house. But I guess at the end of the day, whether or not you'd be willing to look at and then entertain that A smaller porch expansion would be up to you guys. So everything else we've worked out with staff, including the window size and the dormer. So the only topic of discussion is the actual porch itself. Would you care to see what the 14-foot porch looks like? I have handouts for everyone if you would.
I have a staff question. So what we're, and if I sound, I just need to ask this question. What we need to do right this minute is evaluate what's already been evaluated, and then if it's, we can't really bring up a 14-foot addition at this point because we're not even looking at a 14-foot addition, correct?
That's correct. Generally, what we ask and what the precedent has been is someone presents one proposal for y'all to consider and then gets feedback on that, and if they wish to bring something else forward, it would come forward at another meeting with appropriate staff comments and time to review.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick question. It says in the materials that you applied for a variance with the zoning board. Has that already occurred? Or
Yes,
is that
ma'am.
pending?
It was granted on
Okay.
Tuesday.
Any other questions?
At that same hearing, you did not apply for a variance for the porch, though, right? Because it would,
No, that was for the porch because the house is already over the lot coverage maximum or limit. So that was actually to exceed what's existing and what's it's classified for zoning, which is 30%. So they basically granted the variance to increase the lot coverage to incorporate this porch, should it be approved by you guys.
Just let me clarify, they're two very separate reviews.
Can you see the image of the photograph of the house, please? I just wanted to verify that the roof is indeed a steel roof.
Yes, ma'am. It's actually a 5V screw-down metal roof.
Thank you.
And the only comment in relation to the porch is that it would be, the way it would be done, oh, yes. The way the porch would actually be done, it would be able, if they wanted to at a later time, to be brought back to its original state. Because we would just be extending it. The house has 12-foot ceilings inside, so it gives enough clearance to actually just extend the roof line down, would keep the original beam, and then do another beam on the porch as well underneath to kind of give symmetry, and it would just extend out. So you could remove the roof panels, and the original roof line and structure could be brought back to its original form. But aside from that, there's no real other comments or contests.
Anybody else?
If the applicant wishes for us to consider the 14-foot depth, would we then defer?
I think you need to consider, well, you could defer. You could
Basically,
withdraw.
if a porch extension wouldn't be approved in any manner, despite its massing, then it wouldn't matter. And then we wouldn't actually want you to look at it in regards to making a decision on it today. You would basically be making a decision on the 20-foot. However, if massing is something that you as a board feel would affect your decision, then we'd be happy for it to be the rest of the house be approved and the 20-foot extension not be approved today. And then we would be on next month's agenda with the 14-foot. However, to not get on the agenda for next month, just take comments on what you saw from the handouts. If you were like, well, we still think massing's off.
I think I'm trying to get my head around how we could maybe produce a motion that helps you advance your project without.
You would just not approve the porch, but approve.
No, I understand that. I'm just making a comment.
I'm hesitant to recommend that porch is a significant part of the project. So I think in order to approve the Bailey bill, you have to consider the project as a whole, if you follow me.
And then work can't get started on all of the renovation if that's to be, the Bailey bill has to be approved in order for it to be.
We would have time to move forward and get on the agenda later for the Bailey bill. We just put it on all at one time, because the porch is a big issue to the homeowners. They would love to have it they intend this to be their forever home when it was renovated. They've been there for about 15 years so far. And it's something that from a visiting neighborhood, community standpoint, and from a livability standpoint, and with the floor plan of what's intended for the renovation, that they highly desire. So whether or not they would be willing to forego the Bailey bill to do it, that would be their decision. However, they could come back if you were willing to entertain a porch extension, and they would just know at that point that it could potentially mean they would lose the Bailey bill. And then we would propose the smaller porch on the next month's meeting.
I have a staff question. Am I understanding correctly that staff in their review says any kind of porch addition does not comply?
That's correct. This is a very visible rear addition, unusual in the neighborhood because truly most of what I've seen there, they don't have these sorts of porches. So the way the house was constructed originally, at its very original state, it had those two projecting bays creating that inner courtyard, if you will, a little one now. And then they incorporated that porch, again, very early on, 1919, into that larger projecting bay, but sort of keeping that sense of those two projecting bays and how important they were to the architecture of the original house. So filling in that space with an enlarged porch doesn't meet the criteria for the district, much less the Bailey bill, in terms of unique architectural features, historic materials, and so on. So extending it out, essentially the way it's drawn now, fills in that space, interrupts that original architecture with those projecting gables. It creates a whole new massing to the building. Normally when you have additions coming off of a building, they can't come off the back and they mimic the roof line, and usually we do a hyphen. And this is very unusual because it's an unusual house and it's highly visible, since it's on a corner. But in this instance, the projection and the roof line's going this way, so it's not coming off the back of the house, it's traveling across it. And so it's intersecting that nearest bay to the street, cutting across there right above the window, so you lose that sense of that bay and its original architecture, as well as filling that void that's part of the original architecture of the house. So, losing that, no matter what the projection is something of concern for the guidelines. And we had talked about maybe a deck at some point, but I know that's not what the owners really prefer. They have a few other options on the back of that parcel, but it's not exactly what they're looking for. But unfortunately, it just conflicts with what our staff's interpretation is.
Although, can you clarify one thing?
Yeah.
When you say a deck, could they keep the existing roof line and the porch as is and have a deck that's open
Yeah.
for the remainder? Okay, because originally that wasn't. She thought it was going to have to be a patio or something on grade.
Yeah, well, if you had something lower but without a roof line, I think you could still read the house. So we
So
could
it couldn't
talk
be an
about this.
extension of the existing porch just without a roof.
Potentially, I would have to look at details.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? Thank you. Anybody wants to speak in favor of or oppose this case? From Chester? Anybody would like to make a motion?
I move that we grant the certificate of design approval. However, there will have to be certain conditions which will make it compliant with section 1764D and section 1769E of the ordinance, and those conditions would require that the rear porch space not to be expanded, the dormer addition not be visible from the street. All materials proposed for removal must be approved by the staff, and if there are any other details, we would defer to staff on that. With respect to the Bailey bill, which is governed by section 17698, we'd recommend preliminary certification of the Bailey bill with the following conditions. Again, the rear porch space shouldn't be expanded. The project meeting or exceeding the 20% investment thresholds requirements for qualified rehabilitation expenses. And once again, we would refer back to section 17698 for all work standards, with the remaining details being deferred to staff.
Second.
Can we have a vote?
Certainly, Mr. Bachnight,
Yes.
Mr. Broom,
Yes.
Mr. Cohn,
Yes.
Mr. Dinkins.
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Moore.
Yes.
Motion passes.
This proposed new construction at 2212 Senate Street was presented at the December 12th, 2019 and January 9th, 2020 meetings. The Commission made a motion at both meetings to defer to allow time to get revised drawings from the applicant that address staff recommendations. The proposed new construction generally complies with the guidelines, but staff identified two elements which were not found to comply with the overall existing historic patterns of the neighborhood. The initial concerns with the project were with the front facade and how far beyond the porch the right gable wing extends. The right wing, as designed, would extend 6 feet beyond the end of the porch. Also, the window placements on the provided plans are not consistent with historic rhythm of openings. The applicant on December 10th, 2019, prior to the December 12th meeting, had provided pictures of window patterns found throughout the district, and staff agreed with the examples shown. While no new materials have been presented to staff by the applicant, I did receive a phone call from Mr. Harris regarding changes to the front porch. In this phone call, he expressed being open to extending the porch by 3 feet, which would bring the difference of the wing and the porch to only 3 feet. Considering this recent phone call, staff recommends approval with the condition that plans are received showing window placements as represented by the applicant's photo examples, and the condition of extending the porch no more than 3 feet to better meet the gable wing.
Is the applicant here today? Okay. Does anybody here would like to speak in favor of or propose? Favor of or not in favor of?
Can you clarify the condition on the plans being received? Or just repeat that again, if you don't mind?
I haven't received any new revised plans, but he made a phone call where he said he would extend the porch to better be in line with that right gable wing if it didn't exceed more than 3 feet. And staff would recommend approval of that.
Yeah, I'm just in the spirit of not continuing a deferral, putting a motion that address it. I think you stated something about plans are to be received from staff or by staff from the applicant.
With the condition that plans are received showing window placements as represented by the applicant's photo examples, and the condition of extending the porch no more than 3 feet to better meet the gable wing.
This is a staff question. When I look at the recommendations, and I might just be missing it, but I don't see a bullet point within the recommendations about plans being submitted.
Oh, in the previous, in the recommendations previously submitted to you?
No, when I look at this, I see that the staff recommends granting a certificate of design approval with the following conditions. The form and ratio of the front facade should be more in line, blah, 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 blah. Extend the left bay forward, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes through windows, but I felt from the previous question that you don't have any plans and there's no recommendation in these bullet points for the applicant to submit revised plans, whatever. And so is that language that someone needs to put in there, or is it covered by the bullet points that are here?
I think it's probably covered, and our intent is that we would meet with the applicant to get them to sign off on those conditions. So we avoided the language about submitting new plans as long as we can get the sign off on what they agreed to.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
Just to make sure, I'm sorry, you've already
Yeah.
said this twice, I apologize, but, so the first condition had something to do with extending the porch by 3 feet?
Correct.
Okay, to make it in line with the right gable?
Correct.
Okay. And then the other condition is what we were just discussing in terms of having revised plans submitted consistent with the pictures that they previously submitted?
Correct.
Okay. Was that the totality of the conditions that
That
y'all
was
discussed?
everything, yes.
Okay.
And that's sufficient from a motion standpoint?
If y'all defer all details to staff, generally we can cover most anything that's not needed to be passed by y'all. We can make sure everything else is covered.
Okay.
Okay, anybody would like to make a motion?
I'm happy to give it a shot. Give it a shot.
Give it a good one.
All right, I'll make the motion that we grant a certificate of design approval for 2212 Senate Street in accordance with the design guidelines in section 17-674 of the city ordinance with the following conditions: that the applicant extend the left bay forward 3 feet to meet the right gabled wing, and that all windows are consistent in size and spacing, subject to the pictures presented from the applicant to staff, with all details deferred to staff, and final review of the plans deferred to staff.
Does that motion take into consideration all windows or just the windows you addressed?
I would say all windows.
And Mr. Cohn, actually the left bay the porch needs to move forward 3 feet rather than the left bay.
Oh, okay. I'll amend that to specifically be the left porch.
The porch.
The porch. Thank you.
Anybody with a second?
Second.
Can we have a vote?
Mr. Bachnight?
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn?
Yes.
Mr. Dinkins?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Motion passes.
I guess that's all the cases to be heard tonight.
Those are all the cases.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Unless we have an executive session coming up.
No executive session, but I did have just one item under other business. I just wanted to introduce Chloe Jacob, who's here. She's going to become a new commissioner come March. So she's sitting in on the meeting for a little experience. So anyway, if y'all would make her welcome, appreciate it. We're very glad to have her.
Thank you. All right, I would like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting. Take a vote, please.
Mr. Bachnight?
Yes.
Mr. Broom?
Yes.
Mr. Cohn? Mr. Dinkins?
Yes.
Ms. Fuller-Wilt? Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Nice job.
I'm going to miss you.
Likewise.
Great Valentine's.